Good morning. Welcome to day 2 of Meetup 25. I'd like to first acknowledge the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and their connections to sea, land and community. We pay our respects to their elders past and present and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples today. How amazing was yesterday? Easily my favourite single day at Meetup over my 7 days. What I absolutely loved, and I know it's a real fan favourite, and we try to incorporate this as much as we can, but it's those insights and those contributions from you to you, which is the absolute essence of Meetup and why we facilitate these events and continue to do that. Everything else about Meetup is periphery and surrounded by that. So I want to continue to thank and ask you to continue those contributions. It's the essence and the beauty of the Schoolbox community that you're so willing to share, no matter what stage you're at and your school is at. You're willing to share to those that are eager to learn more and eager to get more out of their experiences. A big shout out, Brenton Hardy. Where are you, mate? Hoping you're here today. Mate, that was, for those that don't know, Brenton organised an ad hoc session after day 1, sharing his solution experience for those that are faced with the deprecation of Operu in a few short months. Brenton took it upon himself to put it out there, say, hey, let me share you what I've done, and lots of people are excited about that. That is, again, the essence of what Meetup and the Schoolbox community is about. What I'm really humbled about is that, Brenton, you're almost at your 10-year mark in the Schoolbox community, yet you're still so passionate about Schoolbox, about the community, and willing to continue to give, mate. So, mate, I love your work, and a big shout out to you. Thank you. And of course, there was some great entertainment for those that were at the dinner last night. How did that guy pull that stuff out of his jacket? I'm of course talking about Sean Richards taking a $100 bill out. And what's even more magical, that he gave it away to the magician. Now that's some true magic. Kudos, before we get started, kudos to all the dads here today that I'm sure many of you are missing your opportunity to be at your children's school for the dads' breakfasts and functions. We thank you for sacrificing that to be here today. Father's Day for Australia, New Zealand here on Sunday. A big round of applause for all the dads here today, please. As we move on to our first session, I hope we've made it quite clear of our initial approach to the utilisation and the leverage of AI in what we do in providing solutions for you all. It's a very, very big topic, and it's a three-dimensional topic, and everyone's got views and theories and are at different stages. And I will go into that in quite some depth in the next session that James is leading after a morning tea for those that are attending that. But I just wanted to sort of wrap it up in one sentence, if I can. Schoolbox, we feel like we've got a real responsibility to you as a community, but more so to your teachers and to your students. We feel our responsibility is to be right in the middle of the conversation with you, partnering with you to understand what it is that you need, asking the right questions, partnering with you to deliver something that shifts the needle, that is really meaningful, but above all else is safe. And so I hope that you resonate with that approach. It's something that we've considered for a while. We weren't rushing to be first to market with certain technology or certain approaches. We've been very deliberate in that, and I hope you understand and respect that. Please talk to us about that more, but James will be leading a session and going much deeper into that after morning tea. So let's move across to our panellists and our session this morning. Most of you know the people on stage and perhaps why we've selected these folk. Obviously, Mary Lou, Director of Digital Innovation at Redlands, obviously former a few other schools, but a long-term supporter of Schoolbox, but agitator of Schoolbox as well, in forming what it is that we have today. We love those agitators. So welcome, Mary Lou. Stephen, great to meet you for the first time, and thank you for being a part of this session and part of this conference. Manager of Growth at Blana Learning. Miles Carrick, again, one of those people that doesn't need too much introduction. We love that Miles is now part of the Schoolbox community, as he's passed has seen him in many different roles, many different senior areas of our industry, and we love having him back in the community. Obviously, Chief Innovation Officer at Knox Grammar, and of course James Leckie, the gentleman that built and still builds Schoolbox, a co-founder and co-owner, Chief Technical and Product Owner. I'm just going to ask each of them to give some quick context in terms of your role and the context around AI for the advice and the insights that you're giving today. Mary Lou, can we start with you?
Okay, Yon. Yes, welcome everyone. Thank you for all being here. It's a very full house too. Very impressive after last night. My background in regards to AI is, I suppose, we've been working very closely with our board, and it's been a top-down approach to AI right from November 23, as soon as ChatGPT sort of hit the marketplace. We ran a PD session in that last week of school in 23 and said, this is coming at you next year. Then we went straight into a board meeting in the January to brief them, and obviously the executive team. So it's been a 3-year journey for us, but that top-down approach has really been quite successful for us. So hopefully, happy to talk more about that throughout the panel and out at morning tea as well.
Hi everyone, I'm Steve Henderson from Blana Learning. Really cool to meet all of you yesterday. There's some really good discussions that I joined in. I had actually used Schoolbox many years ago, and seeing where it's at now, it feels like expansion packs have sort of come out, and trying to pick up and learn exactly what you guys are doing now is really, really cool. My background, 12 months, has been really hectic. I actually wrote a book to teach teachers how to use AI with prompt engineering. That got picked up by a group in Ireland, which is called Blana Learning, and they've built the first world K-12 curriculum. So it's literally mapped vertically, horizontally. It's got all these resources, so it's got 196 activities. And they shipped me over to Ireland about 4 months ago to have a look and give them a bit of feedback on it, which was really cool. And then at the end they said, do you want to have a job? I was like, okay, I'll have a go. And yeah, basically just quit my job at Snowmountains Grammar School and fully leaning into this, talking to schools all around the world about how AI works, what's the impacts that they're facing. And this global perspective that I'm getting is just, yeah, there's some really interesting things that are coming out from both Australia, Europe, USA, and the Asia Pacific region. So, and then I'm also doing my PhD. So I just joined at UNSW doing a PhD based on how to get AI as a design partner. So some really interesting stuff coming up.
Wonderful. Thanks.
Good to be here with you this morning. I'm Miles. I like to think that I get to be a professional tinkerer is my thing. Started my career as a software engineer, became a teacher. There's at least one former student and a former colleague from that school here today, which is always fun. I went back into schools about 3 years ago, and one of the reasons that I did that, so I've done this stuff in schools a long time, was director of ICT in a large independent school in Sydney for a while, and then I spent some time at an LMS company, did some property tech stuff, and I was excited to go back, and one of the reasons was that ChatGPT had been launched a few months earlier, and I could see that things looked really different than what they were going to look. I think that schools were going to be wrestling with all new issues, both in the technology, but also just these sort of existential questions about what are the fundamental skills that a student now is going to need to have, or that a professional, that a human is going to need to have, and the role of schools in exploring that is more vital than ever. So I sort of landed at Knox Grammar School and found, we took top down, bottom up. I think I just missed the session of PD days for the start of the year, 2023, and was excited to hear that a geography teacher had reached out to the head of teaching and learning over the holidays and said, I've been playing with this stuff for the last few weeks. Do you reckon I can run some PD for staff? And he said, yep, okay. And so he'd just run an initial PD for staff. And I think since that time, we've been grappling with the top-down and bottom-up sort of nature of these things at our school. And that is, that I'm sure you're experiencing this too. There's no putting this genie back in the bottle. And so it is bottom-up whether we like it or not. And so we need to be turning up with approaches that maybe don't feel top down, but are trying to somehow corral all of that and help chart a course so that it makes sense and keeps us all safe. So really thrilled to be in a place where there is that conversation happening, and really where I would say everyone's up for it. They don't necessarily know the role they need to play, but they're up for it. And so I get to sort of tinker in that space and work with smart people trying to solve that.
Thank you, everyone, for coming along this morning. My name's James. In my role, I look after the direction of Schoolbox, and for me, I guess my context is how do we make these large general-purpose AI engines safe and effective within the educational context. And I find that really interesting, having worked in education for 20 years. It's an amazing technology to work with. But I come at it from the perspective of a huge amount of respect for duty of care and that huge understanding of what it is to be a teacher in a classroom and trying to wrangle all of these competing technologies into a cohesive teaching and learning plan. So from my perspective is how do we provide the tooling and the technology that's going to help teachers actually make use of it, and also allow students to understand and provide a safe space for them to learn how to use it.
Great, thank you for that context. The structure for this session will be, I'll be asking sort of 5 sort of key big questions of the panellists. This is a real discussion, not sure where this is going to go, but that's the beauty of sessions like this. And then the second part is audience participation. We've got a few provocations and questions for you and ways to feed that back in to give us some more insights to really look at. My first big question. Are technology and AI synonymous now, or are they still separate questions and separate strategies? We hear a lot, particularly at conferences and any content that you might read, AI, that's the main topic. The question here is that still so separate? Are those strategies still so separate, or is it really, really part of the technology discussion? Miles, can I start with you, mate?
Sure. Just a light way to start our morning. I think
big questions.
Look, but my gut feeling on this is that there's like so many big questions, there's nuance and there's errors in going too hard at one side or the other of one of these curly questions. And so I think 2 things that I would say. Like one is I think it's an error for us to think about them as being synonymous. I don't think I don't think that it's just an incremental step. What generative AI is doing around technology, it's not just another thing. I think there's it's almost a cliche now to talk about, it's just another calculator. I think the number of times I've seen somebody post on LinkedIn about, we were fine with calculators, we just need to be fine with AI. I think it's just way oversimplifying and underestimating the capability of the tool and the transformative nature of it around what it's doing for reality and for learning, and what it can do. So I think massive error if we think about it as just being pretty much the same, but it's also, I think, an error to think about it as being something we should view entirely separate from tech. And for all sorts of reasons, I think the world is an interconnected place. It's important for us to think about it as special. It comes with a whole ethical layer that we've not needed to encounter and wrestle with before. One of my colleagues here, Kate, our head of digital learning, was saying over breakfast this morning, like, she's never had to have so many ethical conversations with teachers about learning tools. Right? That's new. That is definitely special. But I think, it's also an error for us to think, well, it's, over here I've got the non-AI tech, and over here I've got AI things. Every conversation I want to be having around technology needs to be thinking about what the AI application of that is. Every one of these AI conversations needs to be thinking about what's the technical underpinnings of this. It needs to not feel like, it needs to not be magic to us. We need to understand it. And so, I think that's probably where I'd be landing at the moment on that, is that it's kind of, both of those things are neither at the same time. Yeah.
Nice. Stephen?
I'm going to go the other way. I'm going to say hard no. I really feel technology is sort of your network rollouts, your device rollouts, all that type of stuff, and getting that right. If you think about them, they're systems and they're processes. Whereas AI, when you're dealing with that, that's curriculum. So getting good pedagogy, trying to work out what's the teaching patterns that you're going to use underneath it, that is going to be really critical. And if we don't get that right, that's when we start getting that sort of derailing moment where teachers aren't going to feel confident in it because we haven't put in those frameworks and said, well, how do we actually deliver this to their students? Do we actually understand it ourselves? Those are the questions that sort of need to be asked. And it comes down from leadership, I think. So getting that leadership team really understanding what is the things that our staff are facing, because that trickles down to the students. So I'm really big fan of making sure that AI is more of a focus on curriculum and actual good pedagogy and teaching practices, and how do you deploy that inside the class?
Oh, I'm going to be an agitator again. Yeah, I think it's so much more than just curriculum, though. We're looking at workforce strategy and well-being and all sorts of things in our school when it comes to AI. So, and I think it really demands a different kind of thinking than a lot of technologies and the platforms we've implemented in the past. So I don't see it as just another tool, because I think it's going to impact our teaching, or how we actually think, how we teach and how we learn. So I think, whilst I love technologies and, talk about it all being embedded in a digital ecosystem, I think we have to spend a little bit more time and give more focus to AI, because it's so much larger than just implementing a platform.
James, when I shared this question with you the other day, you had an instant reaction, ooh, that's an interesting question. What's been your reflection since when we first discussed that?
I think I'm probably leaning towards Miles's side, that I think from a technology perspective, we need to treat it with many of the same practices and processes that we've already developed and have in place for all other sort of vendor assessment. We need to look at it from a privacy and security perspective. So all of the existing sort of practices and processes that we have with technology adoption within the classroom, I think, need to still apply, but there are definitely new pitfalls that we haven't yet dealt with technology, and I think ethical is probably my big one, and understanding that most of the technology that we've implemented in the past has been deterministic. We've sort of known what the result will be. This is new in the fact that when we implement it, we actually don't necessarily know what the outcome of that implementation or change will be. So there's this whole uncertainty around how it will go and how it will roll out. And I think that then comes with the curriculum and the training and the PD, making people aware that this isn't like a normal technology. This is a technology where you need to be conscious and aware and monitoring and engaged and learning about it all the time. I think that's the difference in terms of its adoption to previous technology.
Yeah, I think that's a really massive one, James. I think it's special, as you said, not just because of the ethical thing, but that unlike all of those technologies, I was suggesting it's not this incremental step, and I think we'd all probably agree. And I think one of those reasons is that it's not just that we don't know how it's going to roll out, but for the first time, we have technology tools where when we apply them, even at a micro level, we don't know exactly what the outcome is going to be. And that's really exciting. That's one of the reasons it blows our minds that, we could ask 400 people here in the room to work with a particular tool to generate an outcome, and there's every likelihood we're going to get 400 different outcomes. That's really different than every other tool we've ever worked with before, right? And, say the calculator. It'd be a really lousy calculator if we all used our calculator, put in the same inputs and got different outputs. But there's just pros and cons of that. And I think for that reason, there's just the knowledge gap for our students and our staff seems really, really wide. And for us, I think we're all wrestling with this, and there's both this underappreciation of what the power and the capability is, and I think often an overestimation of what it can do as well. So we're constantly finding teachers coming to us saying, I've got this idea that I can take this thing and I'm going to put this in and it's going to generate all of this for me. It's going to solve all of these problems. And we're needing to work with them, we're finding, to say, whoa, just bring your expectations down a little. It's not magic. I wonder if there's something in the question too, and even in the debate, here between us about where's the best home for AI strategy or AI direction in a school? What's your task force look like? Who's the
Again, I think it's the curriculum. That's just me, though.
You've read ahead, haven't you, Miles? I think it's really interesting. I think why this discussion is so rich and ongoing is that we have so many. It's three-dimensional, and there's so many different layers to it. Because I think it's very clear that we don't know. There's so many unknowns, and schools have a responsibility to get ahead of staff and students' knowledge utilisation, and that's a really hard thing for schools to have to jump ahead of with everything else that you're obviously managing in the school environment. It's a real challenge. Perhaps why it's perhaps not. It's still a separate discussion because it needs to be. Maybe everything else is quite under control, and although perhaps different opinions, this is perhaps why it continues to be a separate discussion, because there's still so many unknowns and it's ongoing. Most of your schools have developed your own policies around the adoption, philosophies, risk profile, but certainly practices and utilisation of AI within your schools. And I guess my next big question for this is, when we're assessing the use against these practices, what are we assessing and how are we doing it? Mary Lou.
Okay. Well, I do think there are still a lot of schools that are just stuck at, can we use it?
Yeah.
And rather than, are we using it well? Yeah. And I've got some ASBA survey stats here, which I thought were really interesting. 61% of Australian schools don't have AI policies, and 43% haven't offered any staff PD. So if that's the case, what are we actually trying to measure when usage without understanding isn't process or progress, it's simply risk that we're introducing. So I think we need to assess readiness, not just adoption. We need to have those governance structures, ethical frameworks in place. Obviously, staff capability is a big one, and community engagement. So I think my closing line on that one is really about AI should be amplifying human expertise, not just replacing it. And that's where our focus needs to be. We need to own this and drive it. And we can only do that through having those frameworks and guidelines in place.
What about you, Miles? What do you think?
I think that's a great approach. What we're trying to do at Knox, I think, is this tricky balance of what we might think of as principled pragmatism. So we want to somehow be really clear on these principles. So, this thing ought to amplify and augment human capability. That's a really great principle. And I think being able to find, so our structure at Knox in trying to solve this, and we are just trying to solve it, is we've put together a task force structure that has a steering committee that's fairly lightweight, sits off our executive, and there's 3 of us as exec members that are part of that from different areas of the school, different roles. And that's the sort of leading with some of those principles. We've got a group within technology services we're calling AI builders to be rolling our sleeves up and getting our hands dirty really in the tech and making sure we really know and understand these things and think about how we can be building tools. But the big layer through the middle is all professional learning groups, and seeing that as a bi-directional way of solving this, and particularly when teachers are really keen to try something, trying to find a mechanism to turn that trying of something into a relatively rigorous process. Because I think we don't know what we don't know about some of these. So many of the tools, we don't know what. There's lots of things. That case study out of everybody knows about Brisbane Catholic Ed and the 9.5 hours a week of time saving. That seems unfathomable to me, but it's like, okay, well, what does that look like in our school? Like, how would we even go about calculating that? And what might the benefit be for a senior school geography teacher or for our stage 1 teachers? In what area might that find? What about our enrolments team? What about our people and culture team? So trying to have a lot of sharing of practice and letting that stuff emerge, but doing it in the context of a framework. I think a real challenge then that's part of that question too is that how are we assessing these things? And I think we're really fortunate in many ways. The government framework that came out ages ago now identified, if you don't know that, but I really would encourage you, go and dig it up. It's a really good piece of government planning work, and it identifies some key principles or sort of anchors for you to apply in thinking about that. And I think we've mentioned before earlier about privacy and ethics and things. How we think about the transparency in a tool. How can we transparency in our tool use? I think is one of those things that if we're going to use a tool and select something. Do we know what it's doing, and can we, if a parent or a colleague or really anybody, our board, asked us about, why have you chosen that? What's it really doing? The school is all about these professionals that we get together to teach children. What's going on there? If we can't reason about that and explain that adequately, I think we're in trouble. And also disclosing, I guess, about it. But the big one really is efficacy. Does the tool actually do what it says on the tin? There's been an abundance of SaaS apps for EdTech around for a long time. There's so many more EdTech startups, and we've got a lot of our former students we've found coming and pitching us these EdTech products or AI products that they're now building. And I think that's one of those real danger things, isn't it, with generative AI, is that it's so quick to get something that seems to actually deliver value. This thing seems to generate differentiated, learning content that's personalised for these students. But where's the rigour in that? Has someone actually, who's a professional in this area, actually looked at this thing? And so I think partly what we're trying to do in that middle area there with our professional learning groups, the AI reference groups in the staff, is foster and encourage that kind of thinking. What can we do to have teachers thinking about, is this tool really not just saving me time, but is it doing what I really hope it will do, and how can I even test that? That's a really hard one. Yeah.
Stephen, have you moved past the ability to make it feels like it's working, to provide some evidence or efficacy around that?
It's pretty anecdotal. My one was basically fail hard, fail fast. So we had a policy at our school, go hard, try these different products and see what it can do. And then we got some really rich discussion from that, saying, this little trick here, if you, for example, if you make a really good profile at the start, so instead of writing just as a profile and then asking an instruction, writing a profile first and saying, imagine you're an expert computer science teacher with 20 years experience at da-da-da-da, first, that loaded into the prompt and made it do a lot better because it started thinking in that sort of mindset. We were able to actually build an aviation course, so I've never flown a plane in my life, but I was able to write a whole aviation course at SMEGS for years 9 and 10, so we've got students now graduating that course where they can learn how to fly a plane before they can learn how to drive. And that course, we gave to a flight tutor and he was just blown away. He was like, how did you build these PowerPoints, the lesson plans, the rigor behind it? And my biggest advice with that is do small chunks. So instead of trying to get it to do all of this, break it down to the small individual parts of the lesson plan. So do the teaching structure, the questions that you might be raised up, but actually separate it instead of doing one big, huge one.
So failing fast, what's failure? How do you know it's failed?
When the students get angry. that's probably the easiest way. Like, that's AI, sir. What are you doing?
James, we are obviously incorporating various technologies, obviously including AI, in our platform in different areas. How is Schoolbox viewing the success of that and the successful adoption of what we're trying to create?
Yeah, we're still clearly in the experimentation phase of this industry. There's no doubt about it. There's not a lot of evidence. There's not a lot of data to support, the efficacy and the use of it. So we have to take a bit of a risk, and I think everyone's open to that risk. For us, we need to think around where we want to take that risk and who we want to expose to that risk and who we want to help us assess and provide feedback on that. So when we are working with 300-400 plus schools, we've got over 500,000 students in our system. We want to make sure that we're taking small incremental exposure and risk in that space. We don't want to be exposing 500,000 students to something that's not safe or even not effective, for that matter. I mean, I don't want students and teachers have got not enough time as it stands. I don't want to be providing them more tools that just waste their time. So we really want to make sure that when we are experimenting, we're doing it in a considered way that's low risk, small exposure, taking incremental steps. And just like you said, building the course, it is about taking those small incremental steps, working out which ones work and then building on it from there. Not taking the big wide hits, not taking a big swing and hoping it will work. It is about doing small incremental, and that's the scientific method, right? Just having a small hypothesis, testing that hypothesis and moving forward. And I think that's all we can do while we're in this sort of experimentation phase. We can't point to any tool out there that is 100% proven and tested. There's not a lot of evidence, and I know there are people out there making big claims around time saving and things like that, and I can't see their method or how they've assessed it. I just can't validate that sort of information at the moment. So it is really challenging, but I think we're involved in the experiment like everyone else.
So let's move across to obviously policy, whether it's deliberate or whether it's catching up. For everyone here, but obviously for our panellists, have you wrestled with or identified who is accountable for that adoption and the responsible use within your school? Where does that fall in your school? Stephen, I'm going to start with you.
I'm going to say everyone. So every single person that's inside of a school organisation, it's super, super important that they're all on board. But if you think of someone like Rome, the emperors and the generals at the top, they're the ones that actually drove Rome and got that going and built the empire. So it's the same inside of schools. You need to have your senior leadership team on board, because if one of them doesn't believe in it, it starts getting a bit rocky. So at Ablana, we really focus not on the tools. So everyone's trying to focus on ChatGPT, Claude, which one's the best product and all that type of stuff. No one's really looking at the values, the actions of the students, the ethics that are happening underneath it. And that's really, really important that a senior leadership team works out. Here's the governance policy of what we're going to do. Here's the assessment structure that we're going to use. Are we going to let AI in? Is it going to enhance the way that our teaching works? I think that's really, really important. Because there's some really cool opportunities. So I teach computer science, so one of the things we did, we got students to actually do a Google interview, and they were allowed to use AI to learn before they came into the interview. And that gave so many rich discussion points because they're sort of arguing between each other, oh no, this loop was better this way, and da-da-da. And if we hadn't unlocked that, I think we would have missed that opportunity for some really good discussion. And letting teachers go with that and having the power to play with and go in the sandbox and see what goes wrong and, oh, that didn't work out so well. And like I said, fail hard, fail fast, allows the teachers to then go, oh, that actually worked. And then they can share that practice with everyone. I think that's going to be really, really important.
James, do you want to jump in?
Yeah, so obviously everyone knows that I'm massive about the idea of partnership in this space, and I think this is a partnership between the vendors and schools to work out, I guess, responsible use. And as part of that partnership, you know, I see our responsibility to make sure that what we're doing is transparent, what we're doing is responsible, and making sure that you've got clear insight into our direction, our tools, the data that we're handling and how we're handling it, and all of the interactions that are happening within AI. I think it's really important that we, as a vendor, are an open book so that you can then review and have insight into our behaviour and critique or give feedback or even perhaps oversight of your own users and how they're using the tooling. So I think from my perspective, it's about the partnership, and we're open to, you know, listening and hearing from everyone. That's what my session next is going to be about, is about hearing from you about what is responsibility and what does that mean within your school and what should we be providing as a vendor.
Mary Lou, I wonder if being taking a top-down approach, whether accountability and responsibility for this technology has made its way to position descriptions and role accountabilities. Obviously, we talk about more in the sense of when things go wrong.
Yeah. Well, funny you should say that because we have just tweaked our interview template from when we're recruiting. So our people and culture team, we've just added in a couple of extra questions around digital technologies. And one of them is, what AI tools do you recommend? And that's to start a conversation around how they are using AI in their everyday. So, and that's to give a clear indication that we are a school that expects you to be using AI day to day. So I think that will be, you know, that's only just happened in the last few months. So, and of course we're just in recruiting season now. So we'll see how that plays out. But I can't wait to hear from our recruiters, you know, what those conversations, are people shying away from it or are they owning it? I know I was talking to someone in a head of a legal firm recently, and she was saying they still have grads clearly using AI but denying it when asked about it, and that we have to get kids over this fear because they actually want them to be embracing it, and these grads are saying, no, I didn't. Like, just own it, own it. So it's an interesting space, but you know, I do really think that if our leaders, school leaders and the board aren't engaged with it, we can't expect our teachers to be engaged with it either. So, you know, I report to the board quarterly on what we're doing with our AI task force and the outcomes of that. Every fortnight, I'm now giving an update to the executive team. Last week it was just a 10-minute session, and I gave them all a fun prompt to do. So just every fortnight, it's something different, exposing them to whether it's a different tool, a different prompt to try. That constant engagement, and it does trickle down. You can see it. So
there's just one thing I want to add on to that was that I think it's really important. We talked about human development yesterday in the keynote, and this idea of modelling behaviour, responsible AI behaviour, is really important that teachers are modelling the correct behaviours to students. And if teachers are using AI and denying it or hiding that they created a lesson plan with AI or something like that, like they're not modelling the correct behaviour. That's the exact behaviour that we want them to be talking about. I was generating this with AI. This was created with AI. That is the behaviours that we want to be modelling to students so that they understand that that's the correct behaviour around the ethical use.
And even saying the levels, so saying you might do a 20-60-20 split. So 20% at the start's me writing my stuff and then getting 60% to build it for me. I think that's having that discussion with the kids. They love it because they're like, oh, okay, well, you still have used it in an ethical way then.
Yep.
Miles, how does Knox view responsible and who owns that?
It's an interesting question. I think we're reasonably clear, and in setting up in that task force structure, having a steering committee which is sponsored by a bunch of executive team members, makes it really clear that this is actually a school thing. It's really important. What I'd probably reflection that I've got in hearing this discussion as well is thinking about like your AI guidelines or policy or whatever it is that you've got as an anchor point, that guiding document of sorts. It ought to ideally address that question in all of its forms, both accountability and responsibility, and they're not quite the same thing. You know, I think accountability definitely sits with the head of school or principal in your school perhaps, and senior leaders, and it's not just for the overall strategy of the thing, but maybe for its outworking in different areas. So I guess what comes to mind is our key pastoral leaders. They're responsible for a whole range of pastoral outcomes, or our heads of academic, our academic heads in their various forms, whether it's a head of department is responsible for the AI use in their department, and just like they're responsible for all of the other academic outcomes, all of the other teaching and learning things. And so trying to find that alignment into all of your other policies as well. We don't need an AI assessment policy. We need AI components in what is already an assessment policy. It's just another thing to be incorporated so that it's very much owned then by the learning and teaching team as just part of what they do. And so, again, I think there's nuance of that sort of, like, or there's sort of, there's grey, there's both, it has to be senior level accountability because there's a bunch of things, like I think when we talk about, say, failing fast, which I, as a tinkerer, I really believe in, I still am more of a hacker than I should be, and, but I'm also our privacy officer. I know Mary Lou is at her school as well, and I tell you what, my board doesn't have a high tolerance for failing fast on data breaches, right? So, they're things that we have to somehow balance in that, and so there's absolute clarity on certain things, and somehow that education through the place that, by all means, that we're going to do these experiments, but you can do these experiments, but you can't put student data in there. We're going to do these experiments, but not with your psychologist's notes. And so, where is a safe place to do that? And I think somehow in both the document of sorts, but whatever it is that the strategy is being worked out in your school, trying to actually address that. So what's my individual responsibility as a teacher through to being a head of department or an admin assistant, and all the way through to the head of school. Does the head of school understand what their responsibility might be? Fun questions.
Anything else to add, T? No. If you believe, or for those that believe in typical bell curve of adoption type theories, it will place you in a bucket of anything from innovators and enthusiasts right through to laggards that remain sceptical. I don't like. I like using that theory in a number of different things, but not this discussion. And obviously, discussions like this, as I said before, are three-dimensional. It's not a one-dimensional discussion. However, what I think is sort of a really good starting point for discussions like this is the Gartner hype cycle of AI. It'd be great to see a show of hands for those that have seen this or know this or understand this. if you were to Google this and look at all the different variations of this is used in many, many different forms, like the bell curve of adoption, which is why it can be useful for some conversations. We've set up a little bit of a tool for everyone here today, and what I'd like for you to do over the next 2 minutes is to use your phone, utilising the QR code. What I want you to reflect on and think about is, from your organisation perspective, not you personally, but from your organisation perspective, as a collective, again, it's a one-dimensional look, in each of those 5 areas or 5 stages, where do you think you're mostly aligned to or at the point of those 5 steps? Take a couple of minutes to look through that and think about where you sit. Still got a few people looking at the QR code.
Just when you think you've got past the last piece, there's something new.
Surprise!
It's a new hype.
Who thought the ethical issue? I thought 2 and 3 easily. That's really goes to your point. Give it 15 more seconds. This is really interesting. We'll let the last remaining few people add to that debate. This is not what I expected, but I guess it does reflect Mary Lou's data around the ASBA surveys. Stephen, what's your thoughts on some of these results coming through?
I honestly think it's a wave. Like, just as you start getting used to something and you plateau, bush, here's a new trigger, and you've got to try and adapt and build it. So I think most of us sort of sit in that first space, to be honest, because there's so many things that keep changing, and we need to be adaptable and pivoting with it when it does happen.
Yeah. Obviously, there's cycles of these things, right? They're not one linear. There's obviously cycles as they move through, whether it be for the particular tool, particular area you're looking for technology to support. Miles, does this surprise you?
I don't think so. I wonder. There's 3 of my colleagues here. I'm really curious to know how they've answered, because I reckon if we thought across some different cohorts in our school, I would say it's one of these areas where it's really broad. What the approach is, I would say I defy anybody in my school who thinks they're on the slope of enlightenment. Like, I think we just we're so early on in the whole journey, and I think that's one of the reasons. You mentioned, I think, Grant, that it's maybe not all that applicable. Like, it's hard to fit it here, and that is because it's not there for us to wrestle with. It's not like the adoption of smartphones or something, right? Where you can say, well, where are we? Here's the thing. Where are you at in the adoption of that? It's moving so rapidly. But I would say we've got definite pockets in our school who are have, and we're seeing this, no idea of, like, think about, say, most of our finance team, no idea, and we've asked them, what could be the application in your area? No idea, right? So no wrestling with it at all. So there's that at sort of one end of things, and I actually think, we're probably then a huge number of our staff around the peak of inflated expectations that's tipping then into disillusionment. I would say pretty rapidly, and some are way up there with the inflated expectations, and we're hoping that the trough won't be quite so deep for us.
Mary Lou?
I'm finding that really interesting, Miles, because where we're seeing the most benefit almost in the school is through our professional support staff, particularly when it comes to time saving. So finance, people and culture, lots of work being done around policies, and I'm sure our legal consultancy fees are being reduced. Ben Tallboys, I'm sure, isn't in the audience, but he'll hate me saying this, but using it for review of contracts and things like that. But we did make sure our task force is K to 12. It's a 50-50 split from our junior campus and senior campus, and it's also a 50-50 split between professional support staff and teaching staff. So we're all working together, and they break out to focus on different little subgroups, different topics. Of course, the teachers are more focused on assessment and teaching and learning tools. There's people doing governance, all sorts of things. But and certainly we did a trial of Copilot studio licenses this year for 25 of the staff, and they could nominate. They had to be involved in the task force, and I'm surveying them every 6 months. And at this stage, it is the support and operational staff, and particularly the executive team, that are getting the most benefit from that extra licence and the capabilities it has. But in saying that, every employee has access to an enterprise level Copilot. And so, we know that our staff can securely share any Redlands data within that Copilot environment. And we do encourage them to use whatever other tool they want. Some of us are using Perplexity and Claude and other tools, but that's an education piece. They know that they're not to put Redlands IP or IPP data into those tools at all. So we provide Copilot, and that's it for sensitive data.
James, does this surprise you?
Not particularly. I think, it doesn't surprise me that a lot of schools are sort of at the beginning of this journey. I mean, I know that, our colleagues up here are obviously early adopters, and we sort of are a bit ahead of the curve. It doesn't surprise me that the rest of... And the conversations I've had with schools is that they are, wanting to manage expectations, wanting to manage the rollouts. They're not wanting to go fast. And certainly the data with the uptake of our AI systems within the Schoolbox platform, we're seeing a very slow growth in that. It's not a huge uptick in terms of how schools are engaging with the AI. I thought it, with all the hype and all of the talk, I thought it was going to go a lot faster probably than it did. But I think schools are taking sort of that responsibility pretty highly and going fairly slow with that. And also, I think it's about that managing expectations, because, as Miles said, if you don't manage expectations, you can really slump down into that disillusionment trough, and it can take a while to get out of that. And certainly in our organisation, we probably experienced that a bit, where we got tools pushed at us by all the big vendors. We started to use them. They didn't provide much benefit. The results were pretty mixed. They were over-promising, sort of under-delivering. And then you go, I'm not going to look at that. And everyone stops using them. And in the meantime, those products have been evolving and been developing and been enhancing themselves. And so then you come back 6, 12 months later and you have another look. And now you've got to get everyone out of that trough and say, actually, there's been some gains here. We need to come back and revisit this. And I found that hard within our organisation to come back and revisit things that perhaps didn't work out to begin with. Certainly around the coding space, there was a lot of hype around how AI coding was going to save huge amounts of time, and it just wasn't delivering. It just wasn't able to code complex systems. So the hype was overblown, and but only now we're finding use cases where we can actually introduce AI into the coding practice, where it actually supports and coaches and assists developers for better outcomes. But those have taken a while to find, and there's certainly a lot of hype there that didn't deliver. So yeah, certainly I can respect managing those expectations before adopting.
Great. We'll be utilising that technology again, so if you keep your phones open to that, that'd be great. And get back in with more QR codes coming. Big question number 5. I'm going to change this up a little bit, given the discussion. So we move beyond the trough of disillusionment, moving into that plateau of productivity. The question I want to ask is actually, where do you think AI is going to settle? We talked about AI as a separate conversation, a separate policy, and it still needs to be that big discussion. What do you think the key things are going to be that move us into the plateau of productivity? Is it things that will be taken away? Is it things that will be more incorporated? Is it part of will everything that we utilise be powered in the back end by AI? How are we going to get, what does that look like, future focus, the prediction, right? If we knew what it was, we'd go there straight away. But what's the panel's prediction of moving into that plateau of productivity? What does that look like? How's it going to change from where we are now to what that might look like? Miles, you had a big nod there, so I'm going to start with you.
I love the question because I think we've got to have a go at hypothesising about these things, right? Even if we get it wrong. Yeah. Because I think, if that part of being the principled pragmatism is part of being principled is being intentional and having a red hot go at guessing where the stuff needs to be, like is going to go, and so we can each, we're all in this room charged with helping our schools chart a course between wherever it is that we find ourselves now and that thing. I think right back at the start, I was suggesting that one of the reasons you don't want to decouple how you think about AI from how you think about all the other technology and data decisions in your organisation is, I think, because of exactly this, like because of where the stuff is going. Like one of the things that we do know about generative AI right now is that it's far more effective when it has great context, right? So, like we might be describing, say, the prompting techniques and things of, how do we load it up with what do I want you to do? Like on the really general purpose tools like Claude or ChatGPT or something, who are you? What do I want you to do, etc. The tools are far more effective is what we're seeing so far, at least, when they're given fairly narrow problems to solve. So, right now you're embedded in a tool, and I want you to provide some insights, say, around pastoral care. Like that's one I'm really excited about. The future of in Schoolbox is teachers are making little notes about students all the time. What can we do there that can help us? If Schoolbox has access to the attendance data, it has access to, their academic achievement data, all these other things that we know about students. What is there with a very narrow problem to solve? This isn't a chat interface necessarily, right? And I don't think we know what the interface is going to be. I'm not guessing that. We're all going to go to a Claude-like thing or a ChatGPT-like thing. No idea. But certainly, our tools are going to be able to leverage AI in meaningful ways because they're solving really tight problems for us through access to data. And so I think, one of the things I imagine that it will look like is that our tools will mature tremendously in their ability in a secure, safe way that's respectful of access control and data privacy, of going and finding all of those things and bringing them together. And we know a lot of the tools we work with in EdTech are often, like our SIS tools in particular, really immature when it comes to that sort of stuff. Their ability to actually, pull data together in a meaningful way, in a timely way, and share it. For battles we've had with them about APIs over the last 20 years, this makes that far more acute because I don't want my teachers opening up a chat interface and doing a general purpose like, draft me a thing. Whether it's in that area or it's in building a learning resource. If I want to build a learning activity and this tool has all of this wonderful context around this particular group of 22 students in this class, what have they found has been effective? What's the feedback they've given? Where exactly are they at in their learning? Where are we at in the coursework? What time of the day am I going to be teaching them? You think about all these bits of context you could potentially at some point be applying. I think that's really awesome. And so, I don't know big picture, but I think it's going to be about situating data and insight and action. So, tell me something I didn't know, and now go and do something with it in a really specific agentic way. Okay, well, do this, build this thing, tailor it to these students, let them give you feedback on it and shape it. But it's going to be all about context, and it's going to be about partnering with providers that catch that vision and are up for that. I think that's very much going to be front and centre. Yeah.
Mary Lou, you're very good at partnering with vendors, giving them guidance and working together. If you were to ask this question back of vendors and how they can allow your organisation to get to this point.
Yeah, I think working with vendors, for me, it's always about embedding the tools and doing that well, and it's about the seamless experience for staff. So by introducing more tools, it cannot be a burden. It just has to be a really good user experience. So that's where my focus is. But when you first asked that question, my head went straight simply to a 4-day working week would be really nice. How can we achieve that?
Just after the paperless office. So.
Yeah, that's right, exactly. Yeah. So, yeah, I think it's exciting because there's, there is the opportunity for really delivering on personalised learning. Certainly the surfacing data insights is a huge one, and freeing up time. So whether that's for deeper learning, staff wellbeing, to shift the dial a little bit on what traditional schooling looks like. There's huge opportunities there. That's thrilling and exciting. Yeah.
Your perspective, Stephen, I'm interested in this.
The pastoral care teacher in me sort of lights up a little when I see this, because I kind of think, well, what are we preparing our students for? 10 years down the track, are we getting them ready for their jobs that they're going to be facing, not what we think they're going to be doing today? I'm really, really excited because AI is sort of Pandora's box. It's already unlocked. We can't sort of put it back in and say, no, we can't use this, back to pens and papers, and you can only read books and that's it. So we really have sort of this crossroads. It's either going to go sort of the Star Trek way with modern technologies, and we use it as a partner and we evolve and we get some really cool ideas, or the Wall-E Matrix Terminator dark side, which we don't want. But I think that comes back down to the ethics question. Have we actually thought, how are we going to teach the students ethically to use the AI in a way that's pragmatic, but also is going to empower them to do better things? There's some really, really interesting research that I've been reading that talks about this, this paradigm shift of what are the jobs that they need to face. And a lot of teachers need to know how to do that, because if the teachers don't understand it themselves, they're not going to transfer that information, they're going to transfer their values. And that's really important that we sort of change that mindset, that it's here. How do we use it? How do we leverage it ethically? And then also not be dependent on one particular part of the technology. Assessment, I think that's also going to change a lot. So I really feel, and I've been experimenting with this, thirds. So 1/3, keep it old school project. Here's a big assessment task. And because AI exists, I actually make my projects even bigger now, because I'm like, well, you're using AI, here you go. 1/3 with oral interaction. So like I'd said it before I did the Google interviews. So sitting down with them one-on-one and seeing what they actually understand. Because if we have all this time freed up, you can now use it with that time in class and doing those one-on-one interviews. And then 1/3 old school exams, where it's pen and paper, what do you know? You're in a room, this is all you got. And I think if we do that sort of model, there's some really cool capture of what the students actually know and not what AI is sort of regurgitating to them and they're just deploying that on. So,
James, in our discussions internally, we always look further to that horizon, trying to ignore the hype cycle as much as we can, and not because we've got a responsibility to provide the right technology for all. When you look to that plateau of productivity in the Schoolbox context, what comes to your mind?
Well, firstly, I think we need to keep our sort of scope to Gen AI. I think we shouldn't be looking beyond our current generation of AI, because there's a whole new world beyond Gen AI, and I think we allude to it that this will continue to evolve. There will be AGI after that, and then that'll be a change. But if we just keep our minds on the Gen AI space, and I don't think from a bigger picture perspective, the hype of it replacing whole industries and changing the landscape is probably, I think that's all fairly overblown. I think we're going to see productivity gains, but I don't think they're going to be, redefining the entire world with Gen AI as it currently stands.
So you're telling me I'm not going to have a 4-day week?
I think you might get a 4-day week still, because we might get 10-20% productivity gains, but I don't think we're seeing, I don't think we're all going to be sitting on the beach while robots service drinks anytime soon. But from a Schoolbox perspective, and I think, Miles, you already sort of, I think, alluded to our roadmap a little bit. I'm not sure if you got some insight there, but certainly for us...
Just wishful thinking, I think, or being hopeful.
Certainly for us, the pastoral care area is a really important space. We see a lot of data that needs to be sort of analysed and insights generated. It's time consuming to read all that data, and we can't expect teachers to be across and memorise all of that information and keep up to date. So we see lots of benefit in, taking large quantities of content and summarising it into easily digestible information. And pastoral is one of those key ones for us that is an easy win. The other area that I think Gen AI can really play a big role is in coaching and supporting an idea development. So I think it's overwhelmingly, we're seeing at the moment AI being used almost as a personal companion, someone that you can go and have a conversation with and a discussion to test your ideas, sound off something with, make sure you're heading in the right direction. And I think we'll see more and more coach-like developments in the future. And certainly that's one of the areas that we're thinking about from a Schoolbox perspective. How do we bring in that idea of a coach for students to, we've seen lots of examples with our schools of things like project development and ideation and career direction and advice. All of those sort of things where you can provide coaching and support that goes beyond what perhaps the school has resources to do. I think there's some real big gains to be had in that space as well. So that's certainly my vision of where we see Gen AI going.
Awesome. Right, a couple of big questions for you in the audience. Phones ready again, please. If you were to do a quick assessment of all the AI tools that is utilised in your organisation, if you were to give that a collective mark in its adoption, in its effectiveness, in your organisation, what would you give it?
A lot of work to do.
Yeah.
No copying.
Should be normally distributed over a D.
The bell curve adjusted.
The scale it.
Yeah, he wants full access to
Give it 10 more seconds.
Get under the
tool
hood.
it.
Solve my problem. Love it.
I think that's quite expected.
Yeah.
All right, panelists, hold thoughts on this one. We're going to skip to the next question in a second and we can look to discuss the full results. Next big question. For those that gave it B, C, D, F, what is the key thing? So one answer only. What is the key thing that is preventing your mark being higher? What are the key blockers for this technology in your organisation for it to be more effective? It matches the first.
wall graphs are pretty interesting.
They're really active in
It's like getting everyone in the room just to walk over to a spot.
Who's the favourite?
Wow.
Sort of jostling around.
Okay. Seems like a bit of a trend happening here in terms of where schools are at. Mary Lou's data around how many schools have policies and practices and what's blocking effective use. Panel, a quick reflection on the last two. Stephen, we'll start with you.
I find this not surprising at all. One of the things that we're doing at Blana Learning is teaching executive teams how to actually deploy policy, getting the legal structure in place, what's the assessment structure that you need to do. There's some really good discussion there that we come in. The training packages we run online asynchronously allow not just the exec staff level do it, but also the teachers at the bottom level go through some particular training with it so that they're ready. We're a bit different in Australia because we're sort of halfway through the year at the moment, but overseas, they're actually starting this week. So we've had some pretty robust conversations with schools that have done their training over the summer holidays, and the feedback we've been getting is really, really cool. Like they're feeling a lot more prepared to jump into that classroom because even simple things like what is AI for people that are a little bit older, it's quite hard for them. It's challenging. It's different. It's like when the internet came out. So having good training packages put in place for your schools, I think that's really important, and also making sure the leadership team knows the direction where the ship's going, and having those robust discussions first and not sort of being reactive, they've been responsive to it. That's really important.
Miles, is this surprising for you?
Not at all. Because I think like you could have almost asked any big change question, don't you reckon? Like even like if we were asking a question 5 or 10 years ago about your LMS rollout and what, or ask the customer success implementation team here at Schoolbox, what are the things that prevent a great Schoolbox implementation? And it would be all of these things, wouldn't it? Right?
It's pretty much technology adoption in general, right?
Yeah, right. And so we kind of know this stuff, but that's also what's a bit painful, is that we know this stuff, but it's still blooming hard. Like, it's really hard to get airtime in your exec team in so many schools and to get the right kind of awareness and buy-in. Just possibly harder on this one because it's that much newer. And yeah, again, it's PD, like FaceTime with teachers is the unlock for pretty much everything. We know that. But it doesn't make it any easier to get that in your school. So,
yeah, I don't think this is surprising, but I think what is fascinating is we're seeing governments and whole dioceses rolling out AI solutions like straight into schools with no sort of executive engagement and no rollout plans, just trying to get AI out as, I'm guessing so that they can say they've got an AI plan. And yeah, it doesn't surprise me that we're not quite there yet with the strategy, but it does seem in this particular case that AI may be moving faster than the strategy and maybe getting into places without necessarily the correct strategy being in place, and that I see as only a bigger risk of how do we manage that problem as these tools get rolled out so quickly without the appropriate strategy in place.
Mary Lou, anything to add?
The other stats out of that survey that really aligns with 75% of school boards haven't been briefed on AI, which I was saying to Miles earlier, is just mind-blowing to me. And then 47% of leadership teams don't feel well informed around AI. So I think it's really important, and this should be coming from the board and the executive team, that it needs to be part of your strategic intent or a strategic outcome of your school's strategic plan to make sure that it is embedded. And then it's also on that note, and talking about how fast it's evolving, is that our policy and guidelines around AI is a living document. It lives on our Schoolbox instance. It's many, many pages deep. We've got different sections. One's just a focus on tools. One's on the governance. There's probably about 6 pages and then sub-pages to all of those. And a lot of that's also around the education piece, training videos and where people can get assistance. So I think that's really important too, because it is evolving so fast, that people know that that document, it just can't be a static policy that sits up with all the other policies, because it changes week to week.
Very interesting. Thank you for your contribution, everyone. I want to move on now to discussions on your own tables. We're going to spend the next 10 minutes giving you an opportunity to discuss some of these big questions, some of your thoughts and discussions from what we've put up on within your own table. Have you got your own opinions, key takeaways? What are your learnings? What are your fears? I want this to be quite an open discussion, not a very directed discussion, based upon what we've discussed here. And what I want to do near the end of that 10 minutes is either one or all of you on your table, with that QR code, just putting some of those key insights or key discussion points in and submitting that to us. And what we want to do with that is curate that and create a bit of an asset that we can share with the Schoolbox community post the event, and get all those real gold nuggets from these discussions so we can send it out. So if you spend the next 10 minutes, please, having a discussion on your table, and unearthing perhaps some more gold nuggets within yourselves. Well done, guys.
What are they actually saying?
Key takeaways after that. So
That's been all right.
it's been wonderful. It's awesome.
It's fun. It's good talking to like-minded people that are all on the same page. Like, sometimes you just go on into battles with people like, oh, AI's here. Come on, you have to enjoy it. Legend, thank
Should
you
have
very
done
much.
this at the start, shouldn't we? Has it?
Sitting cross-legged.
Forget about the blood circulation, don't you? If you guys want to, feel free to add some of your key thoughts if you'd like on that too. But yeah, otherwise, sure.
Just chill. Take it all in. All that alcohol. That was always fun. I think it challenges the way you think, because someone is willing to go at your level.
Yeah.
And, you know, give you a different perspective. Like, some of the stuff you guys have said, I've never thought that way. So it's good. It's never the same. What's the next big? Yeah. Have you found issues with music control? Like stuff still going off and going rogue and using ChatGPT and stuff like that?
Actually, so yeah, they are using their own. I just want to say they use yeah, so we have
Don't touch that.
but otherwise you use whatever it is. So there's a real range of tools and that's the students who are using all those.
Yeah. And that's the thing, you need to mirror it, because the teachers can't model it.
Yeah.
Students don't know. They look at it and go, what is this? Yeah. Have you been looking at staff training them to try and say these are the tools that are
Yes, and in the guideline document, there's a tools page, and when they go to that, Copilot, Adobe Firefly, Canva, and one other there that are like, these are the ones we
I love how people especially got the same kind of and then as soon as you see it, like, oh, actually, that's not so bad. What's his name? So that's been the one that we would, they did the gladiator scene, and then they rechanged the perspective. So they literally had the one famous one from behind is what it looks
Going all right,
like.
you think?
And they've re-engineered the
Going all right?
in all around it, and like on like it looks like it's exactly
When you have audits, we don't know, it's hard to get feedback on engagement, but at the same time, the risk was that you open this up to 300 people go out of control. You can go for 4 hours and it can get so drastically difficult to compare if you did it's not a linear thing where you can discuss it such a three-dimensional. You might have people over here and people over here.
I think that's where the initial start of it, he's just some surveys as a brief 30 seconds. This is a little part of it, starts the conversation, and it's okay, now continue that during 42.
Correct.
Get the hell out so we can set up.
Oh, thanks for that reminder. Yeah, I need to make sure everyone moves. I mean, if we go a little bit, it will be a little bit late going to 1 and 2. If we're a little bit late to that, that's okay. If we're,
It's mainly because we're going to get all the rules out, so that we don't have people
what I'm saying is, if we're a bit late for morning tea, we can spend the same amount at morning tea to ensure that there's enough time.
It is good. Oh, we've got some of the English teachers there writing around storybooks. And they love it. They get to draw the picture. I know Adobe the Firefly. We're building the images that go with this. It's in fact when I was a kid, I never were drawing a storybook.
We did think that we'd have this for 20 minutes, but I don't think everyone wants to chat for 20 minutes, but
I just gave it a very basic script.
it was late. He's wanting to, "Oi, I want to do it."
Yeah, right.
Couple more minutes of discussion. I know this can go on for a long period of time. Couple more minutes. Please remember to share in the document, please, as you go.
She calm down after.
Yeah, she did. And then she
Key takeaways, we might have to keep it really short.
10 words. 10 words?
It's hard. That'll take longer to think about fitting it into 10 words.
Oh, goodness, Bill went down the wrong way. Sorry.
Okay, 1 more minute, please. Are they? I really hate to wrap this up. As you finish your discussion, as you finish sharing some of your key nuggets from your table, we're going to move on to some of the key takeaways from the panel, but please take the opportunity to continue to share just a quick summary, bullet point, whatever it is of your key discussion. We could have kept on going perhaps for another half an hour there, and that's a true essence of Meetup. So I really hate having to really end this, but we do need to move on to caffeine and sugar. But as a wrap up, I'd love to get some very quick takeaways from our panellists before we move to morning tea. Mary Lou, I'll start with you.
For me, it's quite simply about knowing how to use AI strategically, and that's about solving problems and making better decisions.
Beautiful. Thanks. Stephen?
I'm going to say AI is here to stay. We really need to have the teachers that will adopt it and will not adopt it. We need to try and help the ones that won't adopt it, move them along and get them a bit more inspired and thinking, this is actually a solution that we can use.
Thank you.
I think as leaders, one of the things that we are predominantly in any organisation is storytellers. And so I think I'm challenged, and I challenge us to be thinking about like how do we craft and shape and tell that story in our school about what's happening, where we are now, what we're doing, and together where we're going. So we're sort of building awareness and building confidence and help, regardless of where people are on that curve, trying to figure out like what's next for me and what might I do, and that I can have much more comfort about what's going next.
From my perspective, I think for me it's about undertaking sort of transparent, small-scale experiments with intent. And partnering with schools to work with you to do those experiments and to learn along with you on this journey around what works and what doesn't work. So we want to continue to sort of deliver those small incremental improvements and measure them and monitor them and make sure that they're effective, and then take the next step with you after that.
Awesome. And if I can add just one last thing, something I share and coach the Schoolbox team in, where there's areas of lack of confidence or being scared or lack of knowledge, lean in. Lean into that, lean into your peers, lean into your colleagues, lean into the community. Don't be scared to have a feeling that you might be found out, that you don't know. You will not gain anything if you don't lean in and reach out. So continue those discussions through this event, through the community. We hope we've got some really great things to share from you all. But this is a discussion I feel is going to continue for some time yet in the various forms. We could have had many of you on the panel today, but we could only have a certain few, and that's why we wanted to get your insights in different ways. But you are all leaders in your communities and in the Schoolbox community, so lean in and share. Can I ask for a big round of applause for our panellists for their insights and being bold enough to share their journeys of where they are in a really interesting topic. Thank you so much. We'll move to morning tea now, and same as tomorrow, we need to separate these rooms. So if I can ask you please to race over to the coffee machine and to morning tea. Thank you.